This is why the Hunter Children's Research Foundation does what it does. Oncology patient Jordan Flay, just one of many young people it's helped through life-saving studies.
And we have funded such things as cancer research, asthma, diabetes.
Its volunteers have raised $1 million since 1996. Now it has 2 high-profile additions to help it reach new heights.
And we are clearly delighted that Dr Cliff Hoskins and Jennifer Hawkins have agreed to become our patrons.
I'm obviously here for my beauty. I'm not quite sure why Jennifer's here. Yes, and that's a great honour to me.
Dr Cliff Hosking was an obvious choice. The retired paediatrician helped form the foundation back in 1996.
Well, if I can, I'll be able to promote paediatric research, and particularly paediatric research in the Hunter. Despite being retired, I still have a connection with research.
From one act of goodwill to another, Variety today presented students at the Cameron Park Special School in Waratah with a new bus. A number of sponsors got on board to make the purchase possible. As for the students, well, they also couldn't wait to do just that.
It means increased access to the community. They have access at the moment with one bus, but with the provision of a second bus, we can get to more people to more places more often.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
A 6-star means that we will get the majority of the very best male and female surfers in the world, so it's going to be really exciting to see them surfing here at Merewether.
For more than a year, the Raw have set the standard in the A-League. Now the big question is, defensive football has helped the Victory and Phoenix blunt Brisbane's attack in recent weeks, but the Jets will approach things differently.
We'll take the ascendancy and we will try and press them and try and disrupt their play and obviously their rhythm, and we'll see how we go.
If the Raw get at least a point at Ausgrid Stadium, they'll equal a 74-year-old Australian record of 35 games undefeated. In a confidence boost for Newcastle, Brisbane hasn't beaten the Jets during that stretch.
Records are made to be broken, you know. So, yeah, I'm not really fazed. They're a really good side and they're playing great football and all that jazz, and, you know, so what? We're playing them on the weekend. It's 2 teams, 11v11. Bring it on.
Ruben Zadkovic has recovered from a hamstring injury and can't wait to return to the starting 11, while Thiago, Michael Bridges and Ben Kantarovski also come back into the mix. Youth team shot stopper Jack Duncan was doing his best to keep them at bay this morning. He's had little time to rest after returning from the young Socceroos' successful campaign at the Asian qualifiers in Malaysia.
Straight on the plane down to Melbourne to be on the bench for the Melbourne Heart game and then the Youth League game, and this hot weather's not helping either, so just need to catch on a bit of sleep, that's about it.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
For many in this room, it's been a 27-year wait. Finally, some of our most familiar surfers and big business have pulled off the seemingly impossible.
Listen, what I'm really delighted to announce is Newcastle's own Surfest has successfully reached 6-star status.
A rating that puts our iconic event at the very top of the sport.
It's huge, you know, it's going to bring the world's best surfers, men and women, into Newcastle.
Surfest is back, 2012, Burton Toyota Pro, the Hunter Sports Women's Classic, 6 stars, absolutely fantastic.
$200,000 will be splashed about in the men's feature, a prize that could see the event revisit its golden era.
For a few years there was sort of funding and sponsorship problems, and it was only just the tireless work of Warren Smith and the team that actually kept the event going.
The aim, now something like this. Surfest brought 15,000 people to Newcastle Beach in 2000. Talks are already underway to again law the draw card, the world #1.
Kelly's a great unknown to everybody, but he's definitely got a soft spot for Newcastle, and the wheels are in motion to try and secure him for the event.
And maybe a postcard wouldn't go astray.
I surf Merewether just about every day of my life, so to think of such a big event here, it's kind of weird. I don't know, it's going to be weird to see all the biggest guys that we've got in the world surfing home break, so it's really something to look forward to.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
The secure compound was targeted just after 2 a.m. Neighbours reported hearing the sound of cars being broken into and a single loud bang. Within minutes, fire had taken hold, severely damaging one room of the Islington headquarters. Newcastle detectives and forensic police are investigating the blaze with the help of the state's gang squad. Officers combed the scene throughout the day. At this stage, it's believed an accelerant was used. No one was injured and none of the bikes inside the compound were damaged. The last major incident at the clubhouse came back in 2004 when 4 men were attacked, 2 shot in the legs. Police are asking anyone with information to contact Newcastle detectives or Crime Stoppers. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
They're credited with saving countless lives. Now there's a special day each year to say thank you to the state's paramedics.
It's just an opportunity for the community to acknowledge the good work that the paramedics are doing day in and day out there.
One person quick to give thanks, Alan Shaw, who quite literally stopped a Newcastle Knights match in September after suffering a heart attack.
The only thing I remember about sitting down, and I don't remember anything of the game.
But now his heart is as strong as ever.
I'd also like to thank the paramedics for this wonderful thing. I think there's a lot of other people who should have received one before me, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today.
The same can be said for Michaeli Murphy.
We were doing some work in the backyard and my daughter's and that were all playing inside, I thought, and I couldn't find her, and we headed straight for the pool and she was floating.
Unfortunately at the time she wasn't breathing, she was in cardiac arrest, her heart wasn't beating.
But thankfully these days she's a picture of health.
You can't get a better reward than seeing a little face like that and knowing that you've changed someone's life and a family.
Thank you for everything. Yeah, she wouldn't be here without them.
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
It's called Wellbeing Watch. It rates health, wealth and happiness, and right now it makes for happy reading.
The wellbeing score was just over 4 out of 5. We wouldn't expect a perfect score.
The groups which scored a low rating of 3.3 or below included single parents and those not in a relationship.
People who were dissatisfied with their neighbourhoods, people who thought they were poor in terms of their assets and income, and people who are unemployed were also in the low categories.
Only 65% of Hunter residents reported feeling safe walking alone after dark. That's significantly lower than the state average. In the health sphere, 80% of respondents reported having good health, yet 60% were either overweight or obese. Close to 20% smoke, and only 1 in 10 reported eating the daily requirement of vegetables. A quarter of respondents felt worn out most of the time. The Wellbeing Report was last released in the Hunter in 2009. The results this time around are quite similar.
The theory of wellbeing expects no difference unless you have very, very adverse times.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
Normally they have a Cinema Pioneer of the Year, but this year they bent the rules to make it the first cinema couple of the year. So we're really very honoured.
We created for the City of Newcastle ourselves a very pleasant entertainment hub. And to be recognized by our peers, I think that is most satisfying.
This year, we've got a lot of new fantastic styles and some great prints. The favourites seem to be the animal prints this season. There's a lot of animal print for summer, a lot of leopard, snake skin that's selling really well, and beautiful, really bright, strong pop colours. But I'm very hands-on and very much not just behind the scenes in the design process as well, but in terms of getting out there and talking to people about swimwear.
He finished just outside the top 20 at the Australian Open last week. Now veteran Peter O'Malley has his sights set on the state's top prize. He even visited the Fern Bay course 2 weeks ago to prepare.
It's very windy out here normally, and a lot of trees. So you've got to be pretty accurate, and you just got to avoid these little pesky little mosquitoes.
He'll also have to watch out for 2008 winner Aaron Townsend, whose confidence is only growing following the Australian Open.
I played nice. I got to play all 4 days. It could have been a little better if I'd have made some more putts, but still it's good preparation, for this.
Even today's windy weather couldn't faze the Charlestown product.
I'm hitting it good, but the course is playing very strong with this southerly breeze. It's a very difficult golf course, so it'll be good to see if this comes up later in the week.
Fellow Novocastrian Blake Windred is just happy to be part of it all. At 13, he's understood to be the youngest player ever to qualify for the tournaments.
2 years ago, I come out here and watched him play, and I never would have thought that I would have been playing in this tournament so soon, so very excited.
Let's hope he handles the conditions better than some did today. Kevin Mettam, NBN News. This is the moment a record Newcastle W League crowd held its breath. Matilda striker Lisa Devana was concussed. She later returned but was subbed at half-time. And that's when it all fell apart for the Jets as Sydney ran out 4-1 winners.
And obviously Lisa's a fantastic player. I mean, she's one of the best strikers in Australia, so of course you're going to notice it. But, we do need to adapt better when we lose a big player like that.
Today was more about giving something back as the girls helped launch Kmart's Christmas appeal. But captain Ariana Hinks can't wait to go on the offensive and stop Canberra's unbeaten run come Saturday.
It's going to be exciting and interesting how our team could respond on such the bad loss we had last weekend. And we really got to prove we're a good team, and we're willing to learn from our mistakes and make it better.
Meanwhile, in the men's camp, Michael Bridges returned to training this morning after taking the weekend off due to the flu.
The type of role that we've got for Bridgie is more a cameo role that he'd be able to do. And again, we'll see if he's up to that for the weekend.
Coach Gary Van Egmond will name the squad to take on Brisbane tomorrow. Kevin Mettam, NBN News.
In a quiet, unassuming street in Bellbird, police set up a crime scene. Officers were called to a house by concerned neighbours at around 7:30 last night.
Upon attending, a 37-year-old female was found with wounds to her abdomen and chest and was pronounced deceased at the scene.
The woman has since been identified as Jodie Jerd. Police allege she was stabbed to death by her 36-year-old partner, Robert Bretherton.
We believe they've been in a relationship for several years. We do not believe that the male was residing at the location.
Neighbours say Ms Jerd was moving into the Crookshank Street house at the time.
I suppose these things happen, you expect them to happen in Sydney, but not just a couple of doors away.
And I can indicate that there was no reported history of domestic violence that we're aware of.
While today forensic crews were at work, last night 2 police officers on their way to the scene never arrived.
The officers were travelling west along Wallenby Road when in a caged police vehicle when it is alleged a Nissan Pulsar conducted a U-turn in front of them. As a result of that, the police vehicle has collided heavily with the Pulsar.
Tonight, the man accused of murdering Ms Jerd remains in custody. Bretherton was refused bail in Maitland Court today. He'll next appear in Newcastle Local Court in January. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
As the vehicle slowed, police got out on foot into the bushland in order to try and locate the vehicle. We're then alleging the Land Cruiser accelerated and drove directly at the police officers.
Yet another gathering for an increasingly meeting-weary community, especially when the man of the moment is missing. Stockton and Mayfield residents groups wrote to the Orica boss urging him to attend.
These matters were so serious that they needed his personal attention, and we used those words. We had a reply from their communications manager, so we didn't have a reply from the managing director.
Orica called this information session this afternoon, and another is set to start soon in Stockton. As we've seen, Graham Liebelt has already faced a grilling today, but not here.
But as I pointed out to his PA, it's not very far to come from Sydney to Newcastle in the afternoon. And her reply was, "Yes, Mr Hayes, we know where Newcastle is."
John Hayes says the CEO should visit the city to fully answer the community's concerns. Meantime, the Kooragang Island plant remains in limbo, shut down after last week's ammonia leak.
Until they do whatever they need to do to make us safe, they should remain closed. If they can't convince us, in a fair dinkum way, that they can't keep us safe, maybe they should never open again.
You couldn't hide the excitement at McGuigan's today. The company is still on a high after collecting 2 major awards at the Winemakers' Night of Nights in London.
Yes, well, it's fantastic accolade to win the International Winemaker of the Year, let alone the Australian producer.
It's the second time in 3 years McGuigan's has won the Global Gong.
That's the big one, to consider that we as a company won more awards than the whole country of Germany put together and the whole country of Chile put together, puts into some perspective just how well we have done there. We won 31 medals out of 34 entries.
Leading the way, the 2006 vintage Semillon, which received the International Semillon Trophy. And the key to its success?
Working at it and developing your styles and making sure those styles are appropriate and current for what the world is looking for.
Brian McGuigan says the accolades are good news for all Hunter Valley vignerons.
And winning something like this just helps us, but it helps our peers as well, because it gives the hunter great status in the Australian world of wine.
This time last week, Jake Higginbottom was 3 shots off the lead at the Australian Open. This morning, the Novocastrian was revelling in his return to familiar territory.
Coming from a big event like that, it makes this feel like a Wednesday comp, so it's good. It gets rid of your nerves, which is good.
With 2 birdies on the front 9, Higginbottom led early on, but some tough putts set him back. The 17-year-old regained his composure with some nice approaches to card a 68 and finish 2 under par.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, so hopefully I can just keep up what I'm doing and make a few more putts and it should be good.
Others weren't so happy with their start. This wasn't going to help. By lunchtime, it began to pour, and that's when one of the big names, James Nitties, teed off. It was a shaky start to say the least, especially on the 3rd, where he ended up in the bunker, but Nitties got out of jail to finish the front 9 even. Fellow Novocastrian Aaron Townsend could relate. This effort kept him in contention. Lee McKechnie also showed some class, and as conditions improve, he could be another to keep the leaders on the hop when competition resumes tomorrow. Kevin Messam, NBN News. Back in October last year, Taylor Regan made his impressive A-League debut against Brisbane. Now, the Roar doesn't seem as menacing for the 23-year-old.
A lot less nerves this time. Last time I was a little bit more nervous, but in saying that, all the pressure's on them.
That's because Brisbane is looking to add to its 34-match unbeaten streak, which would see the club equal an Australian record. Jets coach Gary Van Egmond believes an intense possession-based game will put an end to the Roar's run.
Can we do that quick enough and consistently enough over the duration of 90 minutes? That's the $64 question. I believe we can.
In a boost to the cause, midfielder Ruben Zadkovic will return from injury, but Michael Bridges has again been ruled out.
It's going to be a bit of a push for him to start. He's still getting over the effects of what he had last week, so we'll leave him for this week.
And despite the Jets conceding 3 goals last weekend, it doesn't look like there'll be any changes to the back 4.
I don't see it as a slur on the actual back 4 that we conceded 3 goals. I see it more of a slur on the fact that for the whole of the team that we conceded 3 goals.
Obviously, cop 3 goals and it doesn't look real good as a defender. But at the same time, defending's about all 11 players.
Kevin Messam, NBN News.
It's a young person's game now. You saw just the crowd here today, so yeah, it was only probably 3 people over the age of 30 competed in this competition.
An angry end to a case that began with a fiery dispute.
Hey, they got my son. Why don't you get that on camera? Get that on camera.
Simmering tensions boiled over on Judgment Day in the Christopher Philippou murder trial. Earlier, his family appeared in good spirits ahead of the verdict. Brothers Sam and Luke Willis were gunned down in a Mayfield street in June last year. They lived directly behind Philippou and had approached his house after finding a smashed window in their home. They were shot at close range. Philippou pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of murder, but guilty to manslaughter. His legal team argued the 54-year-old was provoked and that the brothers had brought the weapon with them. But Acting Justice Jane Matthews today ruled it was more likely the accused who'd taken the revolver into the confrontation and then placed the firearm into Sam Willis's hand after the shooting. Justice Matthews went on to say Philippou's actions didn't indicate a loss of self-control, and if anything, his conduct during the shooting and immediately after it pointed in the opposite direction. When the murder verdict was handed down, the Willis family wept uncontrollably.
I don't know what to say. It's, in one way, we're relieved. We're greatly relieved that this part of the process is over.
Philippou and his family appeared unmoved inside the court, but it was a different scene outside, with his son arrested and charged with intimidation.
My husband doesn't worry about guns. He's a family man. He's a grandfather. We've got 2 beautiful grandchildren, and that's all we live for.
They got what they deserved anyway.
Luke and Sam were special. They were really special kids. And forever and a day we're going to lose. We're going to miss their loss in their life. They can never be replaced. Never, never, never. Not forever and a day.
Sentencing proceedings will take place next month. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
This high-density shark net was only placed around the Karua River baths last week. Now it's been targeted by vandals. Several holes were cut below the high tide line, and with reports of sharks in the river, residents fear they're without a safe swimming area.
You get a lot of families down there with the younger kids. I mean, they're the ones that you're really concerned about if a shark gets in there.
Vandals have definitely cut it. We know it's not a shark because it's been proof to be able to deal with their pressure. So someone out there has decided to cut holes in our net.
Port Stephens Council forked out $20,000 for the new net and says the damage means the safety of swimmers can't be guaranteed.
Fairly pissed off, to put it plainly. We've been lobbying to get this net in for 4 or 5 years.
The previous net suffered several vandal attacks last summer, and with each repair job worth $500, Council is counting the cost.
One of those options the community's got to consider is how much they're prepared to spend on fixing vandalism. The idea could be that, well, if the community no longer accepts that vandalism and that cost, we may need to consider removing the net entirely.
Council workers are expected to fix the new net next Thursday when the tide is low enough. Diana Bushby, NBN News. This is what Broadmeadow Racetrack looked like a few weeks ago as work to replace damaged turf began. Now, repairs are well underway. Racing New South Wales closed the track in October due to concerns over lumps and bumps on the track.
We are ahead of schedule. That is that the turf's rolled out. The roots would appear to be knitting up quite well. And the weather's perfect at the moment. We couldn't ask for better growing season in that it's warm, it's humid. And we're getting some rainfall.
And the odds are good that it will be up to scratch by Newcastle's biggest race day.
Boxing Day is definitely our target date to commence racing again, so I would say that yes, we are on target.
The NJC expects to make a decision on whether the meeting will go ahead in mid-December.
Between now and then, we'll have some track experts come along on a weekly basis. They'll take core samples of the profile just to see that the root system's knitting up as it needs to.
But while it may be looking on track right now, there's still plenty of work to be done.
Between now and say mid-December, we'll run some horses around the track and just make sure that the jockeys are happy with what they're seeing out there. Fingers crossed then where all systems go.
Diana Bushby, NBN News.
Hope was all but lost, but today this much-loved bird was finally back. The arrival of Lotto, a $7,500 macaw, a big relief for some very worried pet shop staff.
I thought I was dreaming when they said that they'd found him, and then when he actually showed up here, I was like, no way, couldn't believe it. It was fantastic.
To say the least, it was a surprise, yeah, very much so.
Back in September, thieves pried open the front door, found Lotto's cage, grabbed him and escaped. It's now believed no one would buy the macaw off his captors, and 3 days ago, shop owner John Barrett got a call from police.
They placed him on the side of the road under a tree near a sign in the grass so no one could see him. Then they run Crime Stoppers and alerted the police, the bird from the break-in, that's where it was.
Most importantly, Lotto is healthy and certainly hasn't lost his appetite. He's also just as happy to see customers as they are to see him back.
I didn't think I'd see him again. I really didn't, and it's made my day. It's so good.
It's pretty devastating that he was taken, and we're glad to have him back. We are.
As are his feathered friends.
Hello.
Kevin Messam, NBN News.
Compared to the weather on day one, conditions were almost perfect for the second round of the New South Wales Open. Local lad Lee McKechnie took full advantage, improving 5 shots to finish with a 70. But he still got plenty of work to do. Fellow Hunter golfer Aaron Townsend had an up and down day. 4 birdies were balanced out by 2 bogeys and a double. He had this on the final hole to save an even par round and remain at 1 over for the tournament. Following a 67 yesterday, James Nitties was looking to consolidate his place on the leaderboard. Despite the improvement in conditions, the 30-year-old couldn't match his opening round score.
It was a little disappointing that I didn't, take full advantage of today, but I'm still right there, so it should be good for going into the weekend.
Teenager Jake Higginbottom again proved he's a star of the future. Playing alongside Queensland legend Terry Price, the 18-year-old amateur showed the veteran how it's done. Victoria's Michael Choi wouldn't look out of place on a skateboard, but the overnight leader made a slow start to his second round, opening the door for his rivals.
We have the force plate, we have the launch monitor, we have video cameras, we have 4 cameras, which basically can give the person a lot of technology, but makes it a lot easier to analyse things.
This is perfect for me, being that Jason Laws is my coach and I've got it right here in Newcastle. When I come back home to Australia, I can, gain access to some of the best technology in Australia.
She's more at home in the sky than on solid ground.
It's just the best experience ever. It's like when you dream, when you're flying in your dreams, I think that's probably the closest you can get to the hang gliding feeling.
And for much of the last 11 years, Germany's Corinne Schwiegershausen has been a global high flyer.
I felt very comfortable in the air. I think that's one of my, the secret of my success.
She's claimed an astonishing 4 individual world titles and 6 team world titles.
It is surprising. I mean, yes, I'm ambitious, of course, and I want to do the best I possibly can and keep improving and working on that, training.
Now she's in Australia taking a training break.
Just the vast red earth out in Hay and Wilcannia is very impressive because there's nothing for kilometers on end. And then there's a place called One Tree, and there was one tree. It's a very different concept coming from Europe, where everything is so civilized and you fly from castle to castle to castle.
And Schwiegershausen says it's those experiences that will keep her soaring for as long as she can.
Being on the ground is hard for me, and being underwater is impossible for me.
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News. They're workers fighting to keep the childcare industry alive.
We're losing thousands of educators every year. There's 15,000 that leave the sector every year.
According to these employees, it's because of poor pay. They're pointing the finger straight at the federal government, requesting a wage increase.
At the moment, majority of childcare professionals are paid as little as $17 an hour, and we're looking for professional wages, which is somewhere between $22 an hour and up.
In a statement to NBN Today, Early Childhood Minister Peter Garrett acknowledged the hard work of childcare workers and said the government supports the principle of pay equity, which is why we have supported the Community Workers Test case under the Fair Work Act. But some want immediate action or otherwise fear a bleak future.
It is very sad. We want quality. Parents out there want quality for their children.
What's going to be the situation for working families if we don't have the educators? What's it going to be like for our economy if working parents can't go to work?
Tyson Cottrell, NBN News. Some might call it crazy, others ambitious, but there's no doubting John Kirby's dedication to helping those less fortunate.
Yeah, we started in Edinburgh in the UK. We've done 5 consecutive days, ended up in London, and then we flew out, arrived in Melbourne at 2:30 a.m. on Tuesday night, got changed in a restroom, driven in a taxi, abandoned in some park with a head torch on, and started running in the dark.
And John and his crew have been running ever since, today continuing their journey in Newcastle. It's part of Christians Against Poverty's campaign to help those suffering from debt-related stress.
And we really felt we wanted to do something to really stand up and kind of catch people's attention, to really say, remember the poor. We are running for the lives of poor and needy people.
We've got about 800 families across Australia on our books at the moment. We're worth about $17 million worth of unsecured debt, so it is a big issue.
John will finish his journey in New Zealand later this month.
Coming off a loss to Sydney, Newcastle was looking to bounce back in the nation's capital, but it was the home side who dominated. Stacey Day provided a rare highlight for the Jets, forcing a great save from Matilda's number 1, Lydia Williams. The writing was on the wall as Melissa Barbieri and Ariana Hinkst desperately tried to keep the visitors alive. Sally Shippard proved Movember isn't just for the boys, but showed Newcastle little charity as she broke the deadlock. Barbieri was the busiest player on the pitch as Canberra continued to press for a second. Lisa Devanna provided hope for Newcastle shortly before the break, but Williams was equal to the task. The second half proved to be more of the same, with Barbieri called into action to deny Shippard a second. But the Mo sister still found a way to hurt the Jets as she teed up Michelle Heyman. Seemingly down and out, Newcastle was handed a lifeline when Gemma Simon found a way through. But dual international Elise Perry killed any thoughts of a comeback, providing Heyman with her second for the afternoon and Canberra with its 5th win on the trot.
Last drinks are about to be called at the Catherine Hill Bay Bowling Club. After amalgamating with Swansea RSL 5 years ago, the club is ending its lease on the building, meaning the volunteers who run it need to be out by the end of the month. According to the lease agreement with council, the last tenant must pay for the demolition of the club once the lease is up, a prospect many find hard to accept.
It's vital. It's a community asset.
Now those who give their time to run the club want to take out their own 5-year lease.
And then in that time also work with council. They do have other plans eventually for the land that we're on, and we'd like to work with them so that something of Catherine Hill Bay Bowling Club remains forever.
A contentious 550-lot subdivision for the coastal community was given the final tick of approval earlier this year, which some hope will breathe new life into the area.
If we can hang on long enough or survive long enough for the new development to come, this establishment and those that have come before us that have put their voluntary time in and worked hard for this club comes to fruition.
Club members plan to lodge their application before the December 14 Lake Macquarie Council meeting. Kath Landers, NBN News.
The Jets weren't fishing for excuses at the Ocean Baths this morning, simply cursing the one that got away. The home side made a shaky start, but after 20 minutes, Labano Haliti provided Ryan Griffiths with a golden opportunity. Shortly before half-time, Ruben Zadkovic gave the striker a chance to make amends. The Jets were flying high but literally came crashing back to earth early in the second half. At the other end, Brisbane almost handed Newcastle a gift. The Roar regained their composure and drew level seconds later. Substitute keeper Jack Duncan did his best to keep the Jets in it, but Brisbane eventually showed why it's considered the best team in A-League history. Gary Van Egmond says his side can only get better as they continue to adapt to his coaching style.
We are getting better, and what's even more pleasing is the players are believing it. It's one thing the coach spruiking it, but if the players don't believe it, then it's not going to work.
Having pushed the champions all the way, Griffiths wants to see that level of commitment every week, starting with Adelaide on Friday.
It was pleasing to see that, but the thing is that we need to be up for that every single game, not just against Brisbane Roar. If we fight the same way that we did there, we should win 4 or 5-0.
Back in the headlines, and for all the wrong reasons. The Glendale interchange again seemingly out of reach.
It's just a ridiculous situation, but we should be able to work together on these types of projects.
The $600 million plan has long been seen as vital to get Lake Macquarie residents moving towards public transport.
Lake Macquarie as a region has the highest amount of cars per capita in the state. Now that's an unbelievably bad statistic.
The state government agrees and pledged $15 million towards the solution. The cash-strapped Lake Macquarie Council came up with a further 10.
It's really quite simple. We need $25 million.
A sum the federal government promised, but changes mean the price tag is now too great.
There's a maximum of $15 million per project. There'll be a lot of competition for those funds around the country.
Well, this is a ridiculous situation. It's too small a project now for Infrastructure Australia. It's too big for RDA. He was part of the cabinet process that brought in these new rules.
The outlook for Lake Macquarie isn't pretty. The Gillard government needs a budget surplus, and any money for major projects will more than likely go to marginal seats.
I'm sure that if this was in a marginal electorate, one that they needed, they would find a way to do it. Unfortunately, it's not.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
The Hunter. It's the perfect place for enjoying the great outdoors. But the lifestyle we love so much can also be deadly. The Cancer Institute's map identifies 28 New South Wales regions with high melanoma rates, and 3 Hunter local government areas are on it. Port Stephens came in highest at 12th, Lake Macquarie 16th, while Newcastle is 26th.
The concern for us was that we had so many LGAs in a concentrated area that were so high up compared to the state average. So it tells us that there's something different happening here in the Hunter.
But exactly what isn't clear.
Is it about lifestyle? Is it about the sun protection behaviours of people that live here? We have quite a large degree of outdoor workers population here in the Hunter as well, so that might have something to do with it.
The map's release coincides with the launch of the Cancer Council's latest campaign, Sun Sound. The jingle, performed by musician Ben Lee, will again be played at beaches over summer.
We'll be playing those in Newcastle, Port Stephens and Lake Macquarie beaches over the summer period, every hour, and that's a reminder to reapply sunscreen.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
At just 24, primary school teacher Tammy Nidry's world changed when she was involved in an horrific crash while driving home from work near Cessnock in 2003. She suffered massive head injuries and was on life support for more than 2 weeks.
After my accident, I had to learn to walk, talk, even go to the toilet, everything.
She spent 6 months living here at the Hunter Brain Injury Service, reclaiming her life. Her determination was remarkable, and even 8 years on, her recovery continues.
It'll take till the day I die. Like, for the first 3 years, it's very, very quick and fast recovery, or you get the most improvements in that time, and then on since then, it's slow little increment improvements.
Generally, it's a slow and steady progress as they regain their previous skills.
Tammy now works full-time in an office and has even been able to return to the classroom.
One day I'm still in a school with the kids, not teaching, but I'm in the library helping the accession library books and in the office and things. So I love it.
The Hunter Brain Injury Service has had more than 1,000 clients through its doors since it opened.
Our priority is for severe injuries and for traumatic brain injuries. Most commonly we'd see people after a motor vehicle accident, assaults or falls.
Kath Landers, NBN News.